Thank you for taking the time this afternoon to come to this workshop. Basically what this workshop is procurement fundamentals. It gives you a basic overview on how to do business with the City of Chicago. Our first slide outlines the different areas that we will cover in doing business with the city. The first is our actual mission statement. Then we'll go over the laws that govern our procurement process, procurement terminology that you may hear in doing business with the city, the different types of procurement that we have, our certification, contract monitoring and compliance, programs and bid incentives that we have, also explaining the DPS website and any questions and answers that you may have at the end. Our mission statement: we are the contracting authority for the procurement of goods and services for the City of Chicago, outside of those departments that may have their own authority to procure certain things. We are the main purchasing department. We pledge to work together as a team and with our customers to guarantee an open, fair, and timely process by establishing, communicating, and enforcing superior business practices. Integrity, transparency, public trust, and the law are our guiding principles. The laws governing our procurement process. There are two laws. You have the State of Illinois, ILCS stands for Illinois Compiled Statutes. It's called the Municipal Purchasing Act. The Municipal Purchasing Act governs contracting within the state of Illinois. It's the state statute. From that state statute, the city has Chapter 292 of the Municipal Code of Chicago. It's our ordinance, our home rule authority. And in that ordinance in 292, it will tell you about all of the procurement processes and different programs and incentives and things that we have. Procurement terms. At the beginning of your solicitation, normally when you see a competitive bid, what the city provides is a checklist for bidders in every bid package. And bidders need to review this list, review it thoroughly before submitting any bid to the city. A bidder should be sure to provide all of the information requested so that your bid is complete. Mind you, there may be some information in the solicitation itself that says you're required to submit this with the bid that is not on the checklist. This is the reason why we say to review it thoroughly, because you will also need to provide that material, especially if the solicitation itself will state that if you do not submit this with your bid will be rejected. Procurement terms. You will hear the term contract, bid package, addendum, amendment, or modification. A contract is the ultimate agreement that you enter into with the city, the written agreement, and it's for the provision of goods or services to the city by that vendor. There are a number of different types of contracts that you can enter into with the city, and we will get into some of those later. A bid package. When there's a competitive bid solicitation, there's a complete package. It has the scope of services, it has the bidder requirements, it has standard terms and conditions of the city, it has the checklist, everything that you need. It has acknowledgement pages, execution pages, any exhibits that may be to the contract and other documentations. That's what's called your bid package, the set of documents issued by the city to solicit bids for goods and services. With a competitive bid, that document actually becomes your contract. An addendum is a change to the city's requirements and an invitation to bid, request for qualifications, or a request for proposals. Addendums are issued by DPS to everyone who has picked up a bid package or for e-procurement have signed up for e-procurement. Amendments or modification. That's a document that will actually formally change the terms and conditions of the contract. There are several forms of amendments to contracts. One that stands out is called a change order. When you hear about change orders, you're dealing with a construction contract. The different types of procurement terms. Bids. The majority of our contracts are competitive bid. The Municipal Purchasing Act says that if things are adaptable to competitive bidding, they must be bid out. If they're not, you will find them in the form of a request for a proposal or a request for qualifications. A request for a proposal is a form of competitive procurement that is typically used to solicit proposals to implement a new project that requires professional services. An RFQ is a situation where a vendor has a high degree of technical expertise and knowledge in specific disciplines, and then the city requests qualifications from that vendor and create a pool, which we will also discuss later. Types of procurement. We have small orders, competitive bids, requests for proposals, requests for qualifications, and we have our job order contracts. Small order solicitations are $100,000 or less. The Municipal Purchasing Act does not require formal bid specifications or public advertisement. However, we currently have a small bidding process for our small orders contracts. But by law, it may be solicited by telephone, fax, or written quotation posted on DPS's website. The City of Chicago certified MBE/WBE vendors are typically solicited first for our small orders contracts. If there are none to solicit to, then it's solicited to the wider public. MBE/WBE compliance is required for any bids that are over $10,000. Competitive bids are those $100,000 or more. Formal advertisement is required for those. They are advertised in the Chicago Sun-Times newspaper, daily classified section, on Procurement's website. You can pick solicitations up in the bid and bond room, and the bid solicitation period may be anywhere from 10 to 30 calendar days. Some solicitations require the vendor to supply a deposit. If a deposit is required, your solicitation documents will say such. Competitive bids. In your competitive bids, you may see something that says a pre-bid conference. Sometimes the pre-bid conferences are mandatory. It just depends on the services that are needed. But most times they are just strongly recommended. What occurs in the pre-bid conferences is you go over the process for bidding, you go over the specifications. If you have questions, we can address certain concerns that you may have regarding the specification. This may result in an addendum or what we call a clarification. We talked about an addendum before, which is there is an actual change to some requirements in the solicitation based on questions that were asked in the pre-bid conference. A clarification is if there's no change to the actual solicitation documents, you just need some clarity on a question, the city will issue a clarification. If an addendum is issued with the solicitation documents, the vendors who submit proposals will have to acknowledge that they received this addendum. If there is not a pre-bid meeting, bidders are strongly encouraged to review the specification and contract documents during the bid solicitation period. You contact the Department of Procurement Services. The contract administrator that is responsible for the contract will be on the solicitation documents and regarding any questions that you may have. Also, when you contact them in that method, an addendum or clarification may be issued as well. Bid documents. You should fill in all information that is required in your bid documents. By law, your bid has to be executed. You need to have it signed, executed, and notarized, or your bid will be rejected. Bid and bond or deposit may be required for some bids, as I previously stated, but that amount will not exceed 10% of the contract amount. It must be accepted in the proper form. Cash is not one of them. Bids must be timely submitted on the bid opening date. If it is not submitted, you will see in your solicitation documents it says it will not be accepted. And other solicitation documents it says it may not be accepted. It would be in the CPO's discretion. Bid openings Monday through Friday except any major holidays, 11 a.m. City Hall, bid and bond room, or in e-procurement, you submit your documents through e-procurement. Bids are actually open and they are read out loud. They are tabulated. The bid tabulation and bid documents are reviewed for accuracy and completeness. The tabulation can be viewed online at DPS's website. 24 hours after the bid opening, you can see others' tabulations and documents. Award process. First, there will be a determination made regarding the bidder's responsiveness and responsibility for reward. Responsiveness, have you met all the requirements of the solicitation? Responsibility, are you actually capable of performing the services that are solicited? The department will make a recommendation of award based on what was provided. If that is acceptable, a bid package will be put together by our contract administrators, and the bid contract documents are routed through the signature and approval process. Contractor performance and payment bond, insurance and funding agency concurrence for award. If that is required in any solicitation, those will be obtained. The contract in a competitive bid will be awarded to the lowest and responsible bidder meeting the city specifications. Request for proposals. The method used to solicit proposals to implement a new project requiring professional services. These are used when the city doesn't have in-house technical expertise or resources to implement project or services. So when you see an RFP, you will generally see that the city has defined a very broad scope of services, and they will not fill in every aspect of those services on how the project is implemented. That is the information that they're requesting from the vendor. There is a detailed evaluation of the proposal by an evaluation committee, and it's based on criteria that's actually stated in the RFP. And low price is not the only factor. We do look into things like how will you implement the services, the teams that you will use to implement the services, the budget that you may use to complete the services, An award is made to the highest rated and ranked respondents in an RFP. A RFQ is a method used to solicit qualifications from companies who possess a high degree of technical expertise and knowledge in specific disciplines. The city does what we call a pre-qualification to build a vendor pool. So if you meet the requirements, we create a pool, and to that pool, master agreements are issued. Those master agreements, these vendors sign on to those agreements. Later, task orders are issued for certain projects that the city needs. You respond to the task order request, and from there, they will select a vendor that meets their particular requirements. A fee schedule is not provided, or a cost proposal is not provided at the time of the RFQ, but it is later negotiated as part of the master agreement. And we use these a lot for architectural and engineering. That's what the A&E stands for, design contracts in certain consulting categories. Our job order contracts. Our job order contracts are construction contracts. It's a firm fixed price, competitively bid, indefinite quantity contract, and is designed for each department's construction program. However, these type of construction projects are small to medium-sized projects, not our larger construction projects. And again, the vendor would possess a high degree of technical expertise and knowledge in specific disciplines. In the JOC, instead of bidding every small or medium construction job and developing plans and technical specifications, the department uses a JOC. In the JOC contract, the vendor will develop these specifications along with the department. General contractors are solicited to respond to an advertised JOC specification, which contains a unit price book, which we call the construction task catalog, with a description, unit of measure, and unit of price for each task. So in the construction catalog, I don't know if any of you have ever seen one, but it will have different types of construction services, the materials, the unit price, all of that is included in the task catalog. The only thing you do with a JOC order contract is that you propose an adjustment factor to your normal working hours and your non-normal working hours. And the value of the JOC contract really depends on what the department needs and their budget. Typically, the JOC contract will generally state we may need some electrical services in this area. It doesn't identify the specific task until the project is actually identified. Economic disclosure statements. Solicitation documents request that economic disclosure statements be provided. Online completion of the economic disclosure statement is mandatory for most of our solicitations. Only in very few instances will you be allowed to submit a paper EDS. In addition to the applicant that's applying for the solicitation, any legal entity which owns more than 7.5% interest, direct or indirect, of that applicant must also complete an economic disclosure statement. The rules for our economic disclosure statements are found on the city's website. Certification. The city certifies business in several different areas. There's currently 6 types of certifications, which is a workshop in itself. But you have minority-owned certification, you have women-owned business certifications, you have business enterprises owned by people with disabilities, disadvantaged business enterprises, airport concession disadvantaged business enterprises, and veteran-owned business enterprises. The general requirements, or the basic eligibility requirements, is businesses have to have at least 51% owned and controlled by those qualifying minorities, women, veterans, individuals with disabilities, or other disadvantaged individuals. You also must be a small business, and you have to be an independent and viable business. Those are your basic requirements. On the city's website, you will find the rules and regulations for certification in construction and non-construction. That will further detail any eligibility requirements and criteria that the city looks at to certify a firm. MBE, WBE, DBE participation. These are governed by the City of Chicago Municipal Code. 292420 governs minority-owned and women-owned business enterprises procurement for all contracts other than construction. 292650 governs the same but for construction contracts. And the federal regulations for 49 CFR stands for Code of Federal Regulations, Part 26, set forth the rules for disadvantaged business enterprises on federally funded projects. In our contract document, our solicitation document, in the back of those you will find special conditions. It will be special conditions for service or commodity projects, for construction projects. The city has a goal where they would like you to use a certain number of minority-owned firms and women-owned firms. There's an overarching goal, and then there's a project-specific goal. You must meet the requirements in the project-specific goal unless for some reason you can show good faith efforts why you're not able to meet those requirements. Then you have to submit supporting documentation saying why they should be waived, or those percentages you can only meet a certain amount. That will go into your compliance plan. The subcontractors on the MBE, WBE program have to be able to perform a commercially useful function. What it means to perform a commercially useful function: they have to carry on a distinct element of the work of the contract which is carried out. They have to actually perform those work, manage and supervise the work involved or fulfilling responsibilities as a joint venture. That's how you meet the commercially useful function requirements, which is also outlined in your special condition. A contractor shall not be entitled to a reduction, as I was stating, or a waiver of MBE or WBE goals during the performance of the contract, after substantial completion of the contract, or at the time of contract closeout, unless the contractor in writing makes a request to the CPO for a reduction or waiver. And again, you have to have supporting evidence of why you need a reduction or waiver. A contractor seeking a waiver or reduction of MBE or WBE goals must demonstrate to the satisfaction of the CPO that it has made good faith efforts to meet its MBE and WBE utilization goals. Contract monitoring and compliance. Monitor the actual utilization. We do monitor if you use MBE or WBEs and DBEs that have been listed as subcontractors on your compliance plan. We ensure that there's compliance with the Chicago residency ordinance requirements and also our equal employment opportunity requirements. The Chicago residency ordinance is for construction contracts estimated at $100,000 or more and is funded by the City of Chicago. What that means is 50% of your total work hours must be performed by actual residents of the City of Chicago, and 7.5% of the total work hours must be performed by project area residents. That's our way of helping to give people in the city of Chicago actually help incorporate them into performance under the contract and get jobs. Our equal employment opportunity is to promote equality of opportunity for minority and female personnel on city-funded construction contracts. On those contracts, there's award criteria determination, and what we do is use a canvassing formula, and it has to be inserted into each contract specification of $100,000 or more. Bidders are invited to propose the minority and female employee utilization goals. There is a cap on the contract just for canvassing purposes, but we do encourage you to utilize more. Ways to achieve compliance. The prime can be an MBE, WBE, or DBE. You can joint venture with an MBE, WBE, or DBE. Subcontract a portion of the work to one or more MBE, WBEs, or DBEs. You can purchase materials that are used in the performance of the contract from one or more MBE, WBEs, or DBEs. Reporting requirements. Prime contractors are responsible for submitting monthly subcontractor payment certification forms, weekly certified payrolls, and waivers of lien as part of their compliance. We also have what you call programs and bid incentives. Our programs are the Small Business Initiative Construction Program, and we also have a session on this as well because it's a lot. Mid-sized business initiative programs, we have non-construction mid-sized business initiatives, diversity credit program, target market program for non-construction. We have mentor protege programs, MBE, WBE phase graduation programs, bid incentives. Bid incentives you will find in your solicitation documents, and the way the bid incentives work is that, let's just say you apply for city-based businesses. When the city evaluates your contract to determine if you're the low bidder, a certain percentage is taken from the amount proposed, and based on that, it doesn't lower the value of how much you're being paid, but it helps the city make a determination on whether or not now you have become the low bidder. So we have the veteran-owned business enterprise, small local business. We have the veteran-owned subcontractor utilization, business enterprise owned by people with disabilities, city-based manufacturers, city-based businesses, apprentice utilization. We try to incorporate ex-offenders in our contract to bring them back into the workforce. Alternatively powered vehicles, mentor protege, project area subcontractor, and equal employment opportunity, and an incentive to encourage utilization of MBEs and WBEs when there are no stated goals. Some of our incentive program works where a percentage is not taken off in the beginning, but you get an earned credit, and the earned credit can be utilized when you propose on a different solicitation. Our website, you can find awarded contracts, you can find modifications to those contracts, you can find payments that were made to vendors, the bid tabulations, our weekly bidding opportunities. We can search the MBE, or you can search the MBE WBE directory. You can look up the bid incentives. The rules and regulations for those incentives are on our website, including the regulations for MBE, WBE, and other city rules. And that's at www.cityofchicago.org/procurement. These are the social media things that we use: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, City of Chicago website. And that's all. Do we have any questions? Yes.
After a bid is submitted, approximately how much time does it take for the city to make a decision?
That depends. It varies because the bids have to actually be evaluated, and sometimes it takes longer depending on whether or not there's some issues that come up in the bidding process. So I can't say for certain how long it'll take.
Any minimum amount of time?
Not that I'm aware of.
It looks wide open.
It's kind of open.
If a company that's not in Chicago wins a bid, how do they get the 50% residents? Is that something, is it an agency that they go to get the residents, or how does that work?
So the question is, if there's a business that's not based in the city of Chicago and they want to meet the residency requirements, well, there's a couple things. If you're going to have a physical presence in the city of Chicago, or you're going to be doing business, the city of Chicago, the solicitation has you registered to do business in the city of Chicago. But in terms of being able to recruit certain subcontractors or entities to do business, you can go to places where they have the union to get workers from there. We also have assist agencies, which are included in the procurement package, and those assist agencies assist different minority and women-owned and disadvantaged businesses, and you can pull from those to get people. Also, a good place to go is your aldermen, because they are very involved and pro this program. So there's a couple different avenues. Any other questions? Okay.
Now, this mentor protege program, what is this about, and how do someone get involved with it?
Okay, so we have contractors who are prime contractors, big contractors on a contract, and they like to mentor smaller contractors or their subcontractors on a contract in certain areas that they're specialized in. So again, that's one of our incentive programs. So with that, they would get a mentor, like if you're a prime on a contract, you would submit a mentor protege agreement, and you would outline how you would mentor your subcontractors on the contract. And then you would provide to the city a report on how that progress is going, and the city will check in and see how that's working out. So basically, a prime can mentor their subcontractors, and then subcontractors can mentor their subcontractors. So you have to be on the job, but if you also do a mentoring program outside of the city of Chicago, the city can recognize that as well. And that's part of, you can look at the mentor protege incentive kind of rules and regulations to go into more detail on that. Any other questions? I will pass out my business card. If you don't feel comfortable asking questions in front of everyone, you can always call the office or email me, and I will be glad to assist if I am able to, or direct you to the appropriate people. Okay, so again, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
And if you have a few seconds, if you would fill out the evaluation and just set a name on the desk over there. Have a great evening. And we will see you at the next.